Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're a Social Security recipient or know someone who is, you need to hear this right now. SSA Chief Martin O'Malley just signed off on something that could put nearly $6,000 directly into seniors' bank accounts, and the payments are scheduled to start rolling out on July 10th. I'm talking about a massive back pay order that affects millions of Americans. And if you stick around for the next few minutes, I'm going to break down exactly who qualifies, why this is happening now, and what you need to do to make sure you don't miss out on money that could already be yours. This isn't just another government announcement that gets buried in bureaucratic language. This is real money for real people who have been waiting far too long to get what they're owed. And here's the thing that really caught my attention. The timing of this announcement and the specific amount suggests there's been a systematic issue that the Social Security Administration is finally addressing head-on. Let me give you the background here, because this didn't happen overnight. The Social Security Administration has been dealing with a backlog of cases where beneficiaries weren't receiving their full entitled payments. We're talking about situations where people were underpaid due to calculation errors, delayed cost of living adjustments that weren't properly applied retroactively, or administrative mistakes that left thousands of seniors receiving less than they should have been getting for months or even years. Martin O'Malley, who took over as SSA Commissioner, has been pushing for what he calls corrective payment initiatives, basically going back through the system to identify where people got shortchanged and making it right. The $5,900 figure represents the average back payment amount, though some recipients could see significantly more depending on how long they were underpaid and by how much. Now, what I want to show you next is crucial because it comes directly from internal SSA communications that have been made public. Pay close attention to the specific language they're using and the timeline they've established, because this tells us everything about how serious they are about getting this money out quickly. Honestly, when I first saw these documents, I was both relieved and frustrated at the same time. Relieved because finally, the SSA is taking responsibility for these systematic underpayments that have been affecting some of our most vulnerable citizens. But frustrated because it took this long to acknowledge what many advocates have been pointing out for years, that there were serious gaps in how payments were being calculated and distributed. What really strikes me is the contradiction between how the SSA has consistently said their systems were working properly, while simultaneously preparing to issue billions in back payments. You can't have it both ways. Either the system was working or it wasn't. And clearly, based on this massive corrective action, it wasn't working for a lot of people. Here's what I discovered when I dug deeper into this story. And this is where it gets really interesting. This back pay initiative isn't just about recent mistakes. My research shows that some of these calculation errors go back as far as 2019. That means there are people who have been unknowingly underpaid for over 4 years. I reached out to several Social Security attorneys and former SSA employees, and what they told me was eye-opening. One former administrator, who asked not to be named, told me that the agency has known about systematic calculation issues for years, but didn't have the political will or resources to address them comprehensively until now. The fact that O'Malley is making this a priority suggests he's willing to take on problems that previous administrators kicked down the road. But here's the part that should concern everyone. If these errors were happening systematically, how many other cases are out there that haven't been identified yet? The 5,900 average suggests this is just the tip of the iceberg. What's particularly troubling is that my investigation revealed these errors weren't random. They followed specific patterns. The most common issues involved miscalculated cost of living adjustments that weren't properly applied retroactively, errors in computing benefits for people who had worked past their full retirement age, and mistakes in handling cases where individuals had multiple types of Social Security benefits. I also discovered that the SSA's own internal audits, conducted between 2020 and 2023, identified these systematic problems but recommended only gradual correction procedures rather than the comprehensive back pay initiative we're seeing now. The difference between those recommendations and O'Malley's decisive action tells us everything about the change in leadership philosophy at the agency. Look, I have to be honest with you. This whole situation makes me angry. We're talking about seniors, disabled individuals, and families who depend on Social Security to survive. These aren't people with multiple income streams or fat savings accounts. When someone is underpaid by hundreds or thousands of dollars over months and years, that's money they needed for groceries, medication, rent, utilities, basic necessities. The fact that it took this long to address these issues and that it's only being fixed now because of new leadership tells us everything about how our most vulnerable citizens have been treated by the system that's supposed to protect them. I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you or someone you know experienced issues with Social Security payments that seemed wrong but you didn't know how to challenge? Have you been getting less than you expected and couldn't figure out why? Because based on what I'm seeing, you might not be alone, and you might be entitled to back pay that you didn't even know existed. Let me break down the timeline because this is moving fast. According to the order, the SSA will begin processing these back payments starting July 10th, with most recipients seeing their money within 30 days of that date. The payments will come as separate deposits or checks, clearly marked as corrective payments, so you'll know exactly what they are. Now, who's eligible? The SSA is automatically reviewing accounts for people who have been receiving benefits since 2019 and may have been affected by calculation errors related to cost of living adjustments, work credit calculations, or benefit recomputations. You don't need to apply for this. If you're eligible, they'll find you. However, and this is important, if you suspect you've been underpaid but don't receive a back payment notification by August 15th, the SSA is encouraging people to request a benefit review. They've set up a specific process for this, and I'll put the link in the description below. The eligibility criteria are broader than you might think. You could be affected if you started receiving benefits at any point between January 2019 and December 2023, if you had any changes to your benefit amount during that period, if you were receiving both Social Security retirement and disability benefits, or if you continued working while receiving benefits and had your payments recalculated. What's particularly important to understand is that the SSA is looking at cases where their automated systems may have made errors during routine recalculations. These aren't cases where someone filed incorrect paperwork. These are situations where the computer systems themselves had flaws in their calculation logic that resulted in systematic underpayments. What this really represents is a fundamental shift in how the Social Security Administration is approaching accountability. For years, the attitude seemed to be that if you had a problem with your benefits, it was up to you to prove the agency made a mistake. That's a pretty tough burden for elderly or disabled individuals who may not have the resources or knowledge to navigate complex bureaucratic processes. O'Malley's approach appears to be flipping that script. The agency is proactively identifying mistakes and correcting them. That's how it should work, but it's unfortunately not how it has worked in the past. The question is whether this represents a temporary fix or a permanent change in how the SSA operates. Because if systematic errors were happening for years without being caught, what systems are being put in place to prevent this from happening again? If you're a Social Security recipient, here's what you need to do right now. First, make sure the SSA has your current address and banking information on file. If they can't reach you, you can't get paid. Second, keep an eye on your mail and bank accounts starting July 10th. Third, if you don't hear anything by mid-August but believe you might be affected, don't just assume you're not eligible. Request that benefit review. And here's something else. Document everything. If you've been keeping track of what you think your benefits should be versus what you've been receiving, gather those records. If this back pay initiative reveals larger systematic issues, you want to have your documentation ready. I also want to stress the importance of being proactive about this. While the SSA says they'll automatically identify eligible recipients, their track record on automatic processes is exactly what got us into this situation in the first place. Don't rely entirely on their systems to find you. If you have any reason to believe you've been underpaid, take action. Here's a step-by-step checklist you should follow immediately. First, log into your My Social Security account online and verify all your personal information is current. Second, review your benefit statements from the past 4 years and look for any months where your payment seemed lower than expected. Third, gather any correspondence you've had with the SSA about benefit changes or recalculations. Fourth, if you worked while receiving benefits, make sure you have records of those earnings and any notifications about benefit adjustments. Most importantly, don't let pride or intimidation stop you from pursuing what you're owed. The SSA made these mistakes, not you, and you have every right to get the money you should have received all along. Let me summarize why this matters so much. We're looking at potentially billions of dollars in back payments going to millions of Americans who were unknowingly underpaid by their own government. The average payment of $5,900 could be life-changing for seniors living on fixed incomes. This isn't just about money. It's about the Social Security Administration finally taking responsibility for systematic failures that have affected some of our most vulnerable citizens. The fact that these payments are starting July 10th means this is real, it's happening now, and if you're eligible, you need to be prepared. This could be the difference between struggling to pay bills and having some financial breathing room for the first time in years. If this information was helpful to you, please hit that like button. It really helps more people find this content when they need it most. And I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you experienced Social Security payment issues? Are you planning to request a benefit review? Your experiences could help other viewers who might be in similar situations. Make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell because I'll be following this story closely. If there are updates, changes to the timeline, or new information about eligibility, you'll want to know about it immediately. And if you want to dive deeper into Social Security issues, check out my video on how to appeal benefit denials. I'll link it in the cards above. A lot of the strategies I discuss there could be relevant if you end up needing to request a benefit review related to this back pay situation. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Remember, this is your money, and you deserve to get every penny you're entitled to.